Hey, soccer fans, this is Nick Pateris and Michael Yalmy for the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. We are excited to be joined by Jason Klein, the digital content manager for Forward Madison FC, the USL1 team out of Madison, Wisconsin, as well as the new partner of the Chicago Fire. Jason, thank you for taking some time out tonight. I hope I got all that introductory language correct. How are you?
You definitely got it right, Mike and Nick. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk some soccer. It's never a dull moment when you get to step out of the quarantine for a second and you know talk about something that you really love.
Absolutely. Before we really dive into the content, one of our podcast friends, the Fair Weather Pod, who covers the San Diego Loyal,
Mm.
they said your second question after "Hey, how are you?" needs to be, "When is the pink kit going to be re-released?"
It depends which pink kit you're talking about. We've got multiple pink kits. They're probably talking about the alternate jersey from last year that people really, really liked. And the answer to that is we just got in a shipment of pre-orders that we did a few months ago, and we might have some extras floating around. So if you'd like, send an email to store@forwardmadisonfc.com, and our merchandise manager can tell you if we have any extras there.
Well, there you go. Get the hard-hitting question and the solid answer out of the way first. But for you, soccer is as much as it's about the play and the fans and everything. We think it's about stories, and we like
Oh,
having conversations. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into soccer? How did you get involved with Forward Madison? Uh, I know your profile on the team page says you grew up in around Indianapolis and got to see the Indy 11 kind of take formation. So tell us all about your soccer story.
oh gosh, it's a really funny story because you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, and I would never have predicted that I would be here. My story is basically that I've been a soccer fan for my entire life, and I sort of just stumbled into a job working for a soccer team. Um, when I was in high school, like you said, I grew up around the Indianapolis area, and that's when Indy 11 started in the NASL. And being a big soccer fan, I became a season ticket holder. Now, the president of Indy 11 at the time, his name is Peter Wilt, um, and he's a very
Sounds familiar.
outgoing, yeah, sort of a legend of American soccer, particularly Midwest soccer. Um, and he's well known because he interacts with fans a lot. He gets to know fans. So as a season ticket holder, I met him and I got to know him. Fast forward a few years, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for college, and entering my senior year, I heard that Peter Wilt was coming to Madison to start a new team in USL League One. So it had been a few years, but I sent him an email and I said, "Hey, Peter, I'd really love to help out in any way we can. Is there some place we can meet to chat and talk about it?" So we met up at a campus bar and had cheeseburgers. And in the end, he said, "Okay, yeah, I guess you can intern here during your senior year." And from there, I haven't stopped. I've been working at Forward Madison ever since.
So it's a relatively new team then, as
Yeah.
far as its organization, its history, um, and I guess, yeah, from a digital content perspective as well.
Yeah. The team was announced in 2018, like May 2018, I think, was when Madison Pro Soccer was announced. And then we became Forward Madison in late 2018, which meant that 2019 was our inaugural season. I've been with the team since the Madison Pro Soccer days, since probably around a month before we became Forward Madison.
So I gotta ask, when you were growing up around Indy, did you actually play high school soccer down there?
The thing is, I never played a lot, but I watched a lot. I've only ever played recreationally, which I think is great, right? Because it a lot of soccer fans in America come into it from different perspectives, right? For some
Sure.
people, you're a fan because you played when you were young, and now you want to watch. For me, it was because I sort of fell in love with the sport. Like many Americans, it was watching English soccer. I didn't have any kind of local team, and that's where I found my connection. And it really took having that hometown team to get me engaged in the sport in America. And I think that's part of what informs my decision making, I guess, with Forward Madison is knowing how I created that connection and what it meant to me just as a fan. And how do you bring that to other people?
Very cool. Part of the reason I asked too is I went to high school in Northwest Indiana, and we had some really good soccer teams, Northwest Indiana, Northern Indiana, but then come like state tournaments, the teams from Carmel were just too good, too
Mhm.
well funded, and would pretty much just roll through any of our teams up there. But for 1 year, my high school ended up winning state after I left, of course. But yeah, we know the powerhouses in and around the Indianapolis area. That's for sure.
It's all changed now, right? They're all in the best players all go to academies, so the high school scene isn't as strong as it used to be.
Right. And speaking of the academies, like, how do you think that's, I think to me, and I know Mike and I have talked about, like, that's probably the next big step in American soccer is these MLS teams setting up academies around the country, the U.S. Federation trying to do something now that it disbanded its kind of development
Yeah,
academy program.
yeah, yeah.
Like, where do you see it, and how do you think Forward Madison can help play into that?
Well, you're right. I think it is the next step to some extent. Uh, though there are still many steps to take. I can say, for example, that before the U.S. Soccer Development Academy folded, this week, last week,
Sounds right.
um, there were no development academy clubs in Wisconsin. So if you're a kid who grows up in Madison and you want to get noticed by coaches at the next level, I mean, you have to play for a club in Chicago, which isn't really feasible for every soccer player. So, in my mind, the focus really needs to be on having a geographical breadth of development academies, or at least places for players to grow. And you can do that in several ways, going back into this part of the question about how Ford Madison fits into that. One of them is, I think, by just having professional teams there. It can inspire kids who are there to say, oh, I'm playing soccer at a young age, but I could actually become a professional one day. Look, these people in my hometown are playing. And then the more direct way, right, is setting up academies, which for many lower league clubs is very complicated because you have to navigate this network of youth clubs that are already set up, and you don't want to be taking away their business because you need families from those teams to come to your games. You need to be partners together. Uh, so there it gets into a bit of a gray area, and we've been working on some stuff behind the scenes to work with academies in Madison, like form all-star teams or get the players together. But it's something that's not really set in stone yet.
Gotcha. Mike, what questions did you have for our guest tonight?
Well, the first question I have is when you're talking about a bar there on campus, did it happen to be Wando's?
It wasn't Wando's; it was the Plaza Bar.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to hang out at Wando's all the time up there, get like free bacon with a drink or something on Tuesday nights. It was fantastic.
Official.
Other than that, really the main thing is like I've seen a few games because as Nick was alluding to earlier, I'm a big Toronto FC fan, so I watched the odd TFC2 game
Oh, really?
from
Okay.
USL League One. I did happen to watch the game in Madison. I wanted to go, but unfortunately I was on call, so I couldn't go. But what is the soccer community like in Madison? I mean, it's like that. It's a young, vibrant town. I mean, I remember it was a lot of it's a college town basically. So that's kind of the target market of a lot of these MLS clubs. What is the soccer community like there in Madison?
Madison is a city that was waiting for a soccer team. I mean, demographically, it's such a good soccer market. besides maybe the fact that it's not very big population wise, which makes what we've done, I think, all the more impressive. You've got not just the students there, because as you mentioned, it is partly a college town. It has University of Wisconsin, but it's also got a really vibrant community outside of the university. It's the state capital, so it has a ton of people in that sector, and it also has a ton of people working in businesses, young professionals. There are a couple of companies like Epic and Exact Sciences that just employ thousands of people, mostly very young people that live in Madison. And what we're seeing is a lot of those people have attached to Forward Madison, people in their 20s and 30s who are really looking for something to hang their hat on. It's this element of civic pride that maybe goes beyond that bubble of the university. And in Madison, prior to us coming here, there really wasn't a ton of that happening. So we were able to capture that market and also capture the market, I think, of a lot of soccer fans who were really engaged with the sport but didn't have a local team to root for. When you talk about the Flock, whose shirt I'm wearing here,
Nice.
our main supporters group, they started as a bunch of people who followed different Premier League teams. They all had their own Arsenal supporters group and Chelsea supporters group and Man United supporters group. And when Forward Madison came to town, they all got together and said, okay, soccer is finally here. Let's do something to support this club. So, really, the infrastructure had already been built, and they just needed to combine and come together. And I think that's a big part of the reason why Forward Madison has been successful, is that the establishment or the base had already been established, and there was room for it just to grow and expand.
It's really cool that you say that, because our last couple of podcasts we talked to were the Fairweather Pod out and the Sacktown FC, so Sacramento and San
Yeah.
Diego, and they tell the same story. Like they were fans of the international game, of English clubs, Spanish clubs, and all of that. So like you said, the base was there. You put a local team in there, and it just mobilizes everybody. So West Coast, East Coast, Middle Coast. I don't know if Wisconsin likes to use that phrase, but you hear it around Chicago on occasion. But yeah, it's all over, and it's great to see the growth of the USL to really tap into that and keep the community going.
There's something special, I think, about the sport of soccer in the way that it can engage a community. I think that what you see in American soccer is it gets people together in a way that, say, like minor league baseball doesn't. You don't have supporters groups out at minor league baseball games. You have this sense of community where people are coming together and rooting on something that really represents your city. And that's exactly what Forward Madison taps into, and that's what a lot of the other successful lower league teams have tapped into as well.
That's great to hear. Kind of the next question, we wanted to kind of roll into the new partnership with Forward Madison and the Chicago Fire. We see that a lot of MLS teams are getting affiliates in USL League One. Talk to us a little bit about that development, at least what you know about it. What do you think it's going to mean for the future of both of these clubs?
Well, I think it's a really cool deal for us. We actually had a link with Minnesota United last year, and we're still working with them to an extent, but now Chicago are sort of our main partners. I think our philosophy is, right, if it's going to help us as a club, then we'll work with whoever. I think the key to it is that it needs to be beneficial for both sides, right? So for the Fire, they're partnering with us because they see it as a way for their young players to develop. And some of the language they've used is that they'd rather do this than maybe send them out to, I don't know, they don't have a B team yet. But some of the language they used with us is that they like the idea of the younger players playing in an atmosphere, an environment that's really professional, where you have 5,000 fans cheering the whole game, and you can develop in that in a way that you couldn't when you're playing on a training pitch with a dozen fans there.
Sure.
And on the other hand, for us, what we like about it is the potential to get some really good players. So if we're going to succeed, it helps to have a couple of MLS players on your team. And of course, the thing that you have to negotiate there is that we don't want to take players in that aren't good enough to be starting for us, because it's going to be detrimental to our chances of winning. So in the end, you strike that balance where there are players the Chicago Fire have that maybe aren't good enough to start for them, but are plenty good enough to play for Forward Madison. And that way it's improving our team and developing their players at the same time.
Well, you guys had to be excited then to hear about the 6 different homegrown players that Chicago has signed this offseason. Like, you're going to get to know them really well, I think.
I think so. I think that's probably going to be part of the plan. Of course, everything's a little up in the air right now, but I think once we're both playing again, those guys probably will come down to Madison to some extent, but we'll see. I don't have too much inside information on the technical front.
Gotcha. Well, it's not. We're not trying to pump you for the inside scoop here. We don't need any breaking news on our little show to put you in a tough spot. But we appreciate the insight, Mike. What else you got tonight?
No, that the only other thing that I can really think of is with this COVID-19 stoppage of play. I mean, what does that do to a franchise that is in its opening stages? I mean, how are you guys dealing with this? What are the plans like to keep this going with a stoppage when you have a brand new squad like that?
Well, to some extent, we're lucky because we do have 1 year under our belts. We do have this experience of showing people that Forward Madison is worthwhile. I think it's even a tougher situation to be in for a club like, say, Union Omaha, who are just starting up this year and haven't played any games yet, and now the season is delayed. So I think on the positive side, we've already seen this community that's built around Forward Madison. And I think our goal during the season postponement has to be to keep people engaged with that, to bring people joy during a tough time. I think if you look at our social media right now, a lot of it is about finding some sense of release and enjoyment right now, and continuing to build on the community that we've already started, so that when we do get back and start playing games again, people are more excited than ever. And in fact, I mean, you think about it, once people can start going out again and going to sports games again, right? Forward Madison is the type of thing that can hopefully unite a city. That you can say, I'm proud to be back together with everyone, and I'm proud to be rooting on my team.
Well, that's what we hope happens, especially in a town like Madison. And that's our next road trip destination. So Mike and I, it's only a couple hours from us, so we're going to get up and see a Forward Madison game, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Oh, yeah.
So what else do we need to know about the team? Like, tell us like some cool story or some cool tradition that the team might have that people out of town don't know about. And then tell us one of your stories. Like, do you have like this cool moment of either interacting with a player or someone in management, or maybe an opposing player that you've gotten into a little social media riff with? I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But yeah, just tell us some stories. Like, how can we get to know more about you and the club?
Gosh, I gotta say, Forward Madison is something special. And obviously, you're speaking to a biased source when I say that. But I think even the unbiased observer would probably agree with me on that. If you get a chance to come to a game, I mean, it's so cool. The stadium itself is almost 100 years old. It was mostly built during the Great Depression, originally as a baseball stadium. It hosted a couple of MLB teams and exhibitions. It hosted a couple of NFL games in the late 1920s, early 1930s. Jesse Owens ran a race there once. It's got a lot of history. It's also nice because it's right downtown. It's like 2 blocks from the state capitol building. A lot of people bike or walk or take a bus to it. Super accessible. And then the stands are right on top of the field. There's almost no barrier between the stands and the players. So when it comes together and you can pack the stadium full, you get like this raucous, rowdy crowd that's just going nuts the whole game. And it's just something to observe. I mean, you talk about traditions. There are a lot of I would say irreverent traditions that we've sort of come up with during our first year, since I think that's a lot of the branding of the club. Obviously, it's a team with a plastic flamingo in its logo. One of them is that while we don't have a traditional mascot, we have a live cow at our games. We had a fan vote to name her, and the winner ended up being Lionella Bessie. So when you go to games, you can visit Lionella Bessie's tent. She's in there. She's got a little patch of hay surrounding her, and you can go pet her. I would say that's a cool tradition. If you come to a game, you really need to check out Lionella. In fact, she is trying to get pregnant right now. So she could be pregnant by the time that you come for a match.
Well, I guess we did have some breaking news then on the show tonight about
go,
the
right?
impending pregnancy of Leonella Bessie, and then you'll have to have another naming competition to see what we name her calf.
Oh gosh, I hadn't even thought about that yet. I don't know if I want to think about it.
I mean, a cow in Wisconsin doesn't seem so far-fetched, but
No.
kudos on taking it to the next level. That's phenomenal.
That was the point. I think the original goal was we were going to have her in the team photos, but then there was this problem with like you can't control when she's going to poop, and what if she poops on the field before the game, and that yeah, problem.
I imagine the grounds crew is going to earn their paycheck that week.
The last game, our last home game of the year last year, at the end of the game we won, so obviously it was a celebratory mood, but we brought her onto the field and she did a lap around the field with the players and everybody was cheering her on. And then, like a lot of teams, the players go over to the supporter section, high five everyone, and there was Lionella Bessie with her handler just jogging along behind the players, and everyone's giving her scratches on the head.
That's fantastic, man. I don't think you need another mascot. I think Miss Bessie will be doing just fine for many years to come.
Look, there is no club in the United States that is quite like that. There's no club in the United States where you can high five a cow after the game.
High hoof, high five,
Mm-hmm.
Either way. I like it, man. Well, what about a story? What's something that's personal to you? Some cool memory that you have, or just some radical experience being a part of Forward Madison?
There are a lot of cool memories that come to mind, like the way that the regular season ended last year when we clinched the playoffs on the last day in Lansing, and we had like 200 fans there. That was a lot of fun. Another one would be forming relationships with fans across the country and across the world. One of our season ticket holders, her name is Natalie. She lives in Switzerland and found us through Twitter. She started her own Forward Madison in French Twitter account, and she even flew over to come to one of our games last year. I've become friends with her, and that's one of the highlights of the first season for me. But if I had to pick one, I think it would be the astonishingly shiny cup of all cups. Now, do you know anything about this before I tell the story?
The cup of all cups?
Astonishingly shiny cup of all cups.
Mike, you ever heard of this? This is news to me.
Yeah, I've got nothing over here.
So this
Educate us.
this is one of my favorite stories because I think it exemplifies some of the weirdness and humor that has really made Forward Madison just a lot of fun, not just to work with, but to be a fan of. And it came about late on in the season, when we could sort of see the way games were going. We weren't going to host a home playoff game, but we wanted to have one more home game in the schedule because obviously ticket revenue is a huge part of our business. Game day revenue is what keeps us going. So we scheduled an exhibition game against the Milwaukee Torrent, who are a team that play in the MPSL. And it's, I mean, for our fans, it wasn't like much of a draw on its own. Already that year, we had played Hertha Berlin, Minnesota United, and Leones Negros in exhibition games, who are all like, these big international teams with large followings. And playing an MPSL team, it's not quite the same. It's not going to sell tickets. So we were thinking, what can we do to come up with something that will make this game fun and give it some meaning? So this ended up being an idea that I sort of tossed around with some of our marketing team. We decided that we were going to create a made-up, meaningless trophy to play for. And if that sounds familiar, it's a bit of a parody of some of the made-up, meaningless trophies that have I won't name names, but some of the ones that have been started really in MLS that are just like, these two teams are going to play each other, but now it's a trophy, so now you've got to watch it. So we said, well, if they can do that, we can do that too.
I mean, we know the MLS loves like manufactured rivalries.
So our trophy was the astonishingly shiny cup of all cups. It's named after the trophy in the backyard soccer computer game that you get for winning the whole thing. Nice. I reached out to Mike Pendleton, who's sort of this American soccer Twitter personality. He lives in Tampa Bay. He's a big Rowdies fan, and he does a lot of graphic design. And I asked him, hey, can you help make us a logo for it? He made a fantastic logo, and people were like, oh, this is so cool. So me and Kuba, who's my boss, he's our sort of digital marketing director. We went out to a thrift shop after work, and we got, a salad bowl, a tea kettle, and a gravy boat. And we glued them all on top of each other. And that was our trophy. So we had this made up trophy of like weird silverware that we found at a thrift store. We posted it online and people loved it. And I think when the game actually happened, people cared about winning this trophy. I had it like set up on the sideline at the midfield mark, so that like when you were playing the game, you could see the trophy glinting as the players were playing. And we went down 1-0 in the first half, and it actually had me really nervous because I'm like, oh my gosh, this trophy that we created and that we promoted so much, I didn't really care about this game, but honestly, I'm going to be a bit sad if we have to watch the Milwaukee Torrent celebrating with the trophy that I made. So eventually, we come back and we win the game 2-1. It was a good game, actually. And of course, we do a trophy lift. So there are the players in front of our supporters section lifting this made-up, meaningless trophy made from a salad bowl, a tea kettle, and a gravy boat. And everyone is just going crazy. They're like throwing their water bottles up in the air. There's beer flying everywhere. And it's this moment that just feels like the culmination of something that although it's really silly and funny, is at the same time meaningful in some way and brings people together.
Well, it sounds like now you got an annual game with Milwaukee to keep this trophy rivalry going. I gotta tell you, man, that's a great story. I think, like you said, it embodies American soccer. It embodies like the fun that USL can have, but still maintain a professional organization and be a part of the soccer community in the town. Mike, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts for Jason, or if we want to end on the high note of the astonishingly shiny cup of all cups here.
That's it. Now maybe that's the match we go to next year. Is that match? I don't know. That's fantastic.
How we continue it. Obviously, I don't schedule the exhibitions, but we've got the trophy in our office right now. So if we want to pull it out to a game, look, I'll send you the photos after this recording of some of the celebrations. It's such a funny moment and such a great moment.
Absolutely, I will include that in the YouTube video for sure.
Well, hey man, we want to say thank you for taking your time out. Now that we're all so busy right now with the pandemic delaying everything, but still, thank you for taking your time out. Thank you for opening the door to Forward Madison for us, for our viewers and our listeners. Like we said, we want to make the road trip, so we'll reach out to you and get all the details once the league opens back up again. On a personal note, I want to thank you for your use of the Oxford comma. I did read that in your profile. Something near and dear to my heart. But that's it, man. Thank you so much. We hope you stay safe. If you're ever in the Chicago area, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll come buy you your first beer. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be an honor to have you at a game when we open up again. Please shoot me a message, and we can. I mean, if you can get there a little early, I can show you around the stadium. I mean, we're not, I would say, not a small club, but we're not a club that's too big for anyone.
That's great to hear.
That's awesome.
Before we sign off, how can all of our viewers and listeners find Forward Madison, find you on social media and online?
Well, I'm mostly off social media personally because I think I get enough of that running the Forward Madison account. So sure. You can find us for the most part on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you just search Forward Madison, it'll be there.
Awesome. Jason, nice. We appreciate it, man. Have a great night.
Hey, guys, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciated talking to you. And, hopefully in a few months, I'll get to see you in person.
Sounds great.
Looking forward to it.